Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got with me Harvey Green and Jirah Cox. Harvey, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. Hope you are too.
I can't make fun of you for being late because I was later.
Yes.
So maybe that joke has worn out its welcome. So
I was early today.
Technically, I'd say that makes us
Maybe.
early. Yeah, that's how I define it.
well, stay with me. You were probably early because you weren't out getting gas while Jirah, or at least myself, I was out getting gas. And that's a true story.
What do you need gas for?
I don't know. Maybe you need to get some gas today. Maybe something's happening that we need to talk about a little bit. Truth is, I went to lunch, but I did get gas in my F-150 along the way, which isn't exactly a very efficient vehicle. So I gotta go fuel up my little sports car and hopefully drive it slowly. We're kind of alluding to what we're going to talk about here in a minute. Jirah Cox, Jirah, how's it going?
Good, Andy. Hey, Harvey.
Hey.
Now, you could probably believe this, but I listen to our podcast after the fact sometimes because I want to hear the quality. I want to hear what we talked about. I want to relearn some of the stuff I missed. And one of the things that you mentioned to Kay's last week was you don't trust anyone who hasn't worked on a help desk first. I've got a 19-year-old son getting ready to go off to college. He's going to study information systems, and I can't wait to slap his butt on a help desk somewhere. Can you elaborate on your comment from last week about how awesome it is to have someone come up through the ranks and do their time on a help desk?
Yeah, I think it teaches some really necessary customer service skills and some empathy skills that you just have to interact with our customers, right? Whether you're level 1, level 2, level 3, you might be abstracted from it, but it's all about those customers, right? And helping them be productive, as well as I had some other thought there. Oh, teaching methodical troubleshooting, right? Like you can imagine, we've probably been there, right? Supporting or being a level 1 guy and hearing that phrase of like, the network is down, or I can't log into the network. And it's like, I need some more detail here. Tell me what you've tried so far. So that methodical troubleshooting, right, serves you in literally every area of life, but especially our realm here.
Now, there's a couple elements to me that you probably don't know. Well, one, the IT element and the fact that what you just said about working on a help desk, I find very valuable and it's something I forced myself to do. There's nothing like being on the Microsoft Active Directory Tier 3 support help desk and being the only person in the building at 3 a.m. when Chase Bank calls you and their Active Directory is down. That's a true story.
And that's probably I'm sure a very simple architecture, right? Probably very straightforward.
I did everything I could just to kind of limp along until 8 o'clock and the other guys came in and I could go home. And it was literally 10 minutes before the end of my shift when that call came in. Oh, I was devastated. But you know what I equate your comments and our discussion just now around being on a help desk, the closest thing I can relate that to is dating.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
Learning how to be patient, learning how to understand what the other person is trying to accomplish, not being in a hurry to get to where you're going. Having the empathy to understand that your day might have been really bad and the other person's slightly bad, but you got to make it feel like their day is the most important day to you. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I'm really concerned about the next couple of generations because they don't have to date anymore. They just, swipe left and right on an app, meet up for drinks and hang out with a bunch of friends. And then, they get to the finish line somehow.
Something define requirements. And...
Yeah. They really have no real objectives to what they're trying. Well, they have an objective, I'm sure, but they don't have to go through the steps that we had to go through as old timers used to have to go through.
Did this just become the uphill both ways in the snow conversation?
Yes. But it is
Kids these
uphill
days.
both ways in the snow.
It really is. So I truly believe that it's going to be interesting to see what the next couple generations are like because they don't have to grow up with trying to figure out how to figure out somebody or what's going on. They do, but they know what you're into. They saw your social media. They've been following you on Instagram for months before you actually went out on a date, or maybe they've been following you for 10 minutes on Instagram before you went on a date. Nonetheless, they know all the things that we used to have to pull out of somebody. They now know. It's scary to think about what the next iterations of help desk individuals are going to look like.
I think it'll be interesting to see if we're still just sort of so new as a culture to social media. I mean, nothing would surprise me if in 20 years we look back and, you know, large swaths of population just rejected it, right? It's dead to them. And we've sort of just collectively decided like, that's a bad thing for us to have, you know, and it's sort of just like aging out of the population.
I'm kind of there now. I haven't given up on Facebook, but I don't post a lot. I consume off of it to some degree. And then LinkedIn, I'm all over because that's my business for my livelihood. And I do like that professional interaction. But knowing what that guy I went to high school with, 30 years ago is doing and who he's pissing off today just isn't something I'm excited about finding out every day.
Agreed. I don't do much with, well, I don't do anything with Facebook at all at this point, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have some LinkedIn going and play around with that. But
well, the other part is there's so much of it. My wife and kids are on Instagram. They're on InstaChat, Facebook, Graham, whatever it is. Now, I don't know. I don't even know what all they're on. But when my wife posts something, she has to post it on 3 different things, and she has to tailor it differently for 3 different audiences. I'm like, man, I'm exhausted just watching.
right.
I don't know.
No, thank you.
Sounds like work.
And then inevitably I'll post something. When I do post something, I'll get that message back. Hey, your grammar was incorrect, or you said something that would have offended somebody else. I'm like, oh my God, just. All right. So today's topic is a really timely one. When we got on the call, we were making fun of Harvey, or really making fun of Jirah and I, we were out getting gas kind of,
Yep.
Because supposedly there's a malware issue with the gas pipeline, right? Guys, tell me what's going on. I honestly don't know, but I do know my truck was out of gas. So I got gas a while ago, which maybe that was.
Yeah. I mean, fresh off the headlines, right? Kind of, I think this weekend and coming into this week, we're seeing really critical portions of the infrastructure attacked by ransomware. I think there's even, mitigations being tried at the federal level to try to help out with this, right? And so in my mind, it's like the services you hear on other podcasts that get sponsored. It's like, why are they still sponsoring this podcast? Hasn't every listener already bought this product that's going to buy it? It's like, no, they haven't, right? Like someone every day finally realizes this is for me. I have to go do this. And so like, I think the best way to underline, you have to go plan for ransomware attacks in your environment. You have to go apply defense in depth security every day. Someone else needs to wake up and do that, right? It's an evergreen reminder that, hey, maybe today there's a listener listening who's like, I need to go secure my environment. Am I prepared for this kind of attack?
And the truth is, you're never done. It's how you got to keep reevaluating what you're doing and whether it meets the current latest attack vectors and criteria.
Yeah, for sure. Right. It's a never ending, ongoing methodology, not an end state. Yeah.
And so Harvey, you, at least for your own car, your personal car, you're not running out getting gas. And that's because you've changed the model in your world, right? Or at least for you.
I have, yes, for sure. This is, when you look at the things that are going on right now in the tech world, and I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, like ransomware and attacks and things have really ramped up this year, and starting some of last year. It wasn't just all the good people who work all the time that had to stay home. There were lots of people who are bad actors who stayed home and use that time to hone up and bone up on their code so that they can continue to jump out here and do more and more attacks. This is just another critical infrastructure that is suffering from it at this point. And, we hope they'll be able to quickly get back on their feet, but we're here to talk about making sure that everybody else can be, quick to get back on their feet.
So Harvey, I kind of want to use your example though, real quick. I think of the 3 of us, you're the only one that has an electric car in your household. Is your model that you have in your household where you have an electric car and a petroleum-based car, is that the future where, in both scenarios, if gas shortage happens, you got the electric car. If there's power issues, you've got the gas-powered car. Is that the same as talking about on-premises Nutanix and cloud Nutanix? I'm totally changing the topic on you guys real quick.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I mean, you know, coming from the technical standpoint, in my mind, it was definitely a conscious decision to have one of both. And I mean, it's just like anything else. It's to make sure that you're prepared. When I go on site and visit customers, nobody ever knows it, but I have 2 laptops in my bag. And it's in case something happens to the first one, or if I get there and I need to, hook up to a projector and they don't have, this particular hookup, then, I have to have wires or another output, for the other laptop. So there, it's all a matter of being prepared and making sure that you cover as many risk factors as you can, or that you're willing to, cover paying for it.
Yeah. Jirah, what's your thoughts on a hybrid household where you have a gas car and an electric car? There's going to be a challenge on one side of the equation or the other. And how are you like Harvey? Do you carry just 2 of the 2 electric ones and be prepared for this or that? Or do you have, like, should Harvey be carrying a CPU, like a big computer and a laptop in his bag just in case?
Harvey's a little further down the road, if you will, for the analogy. He's we're still burning all dinosaurs over here, but electric's on the horizon for sure for us. But yeah, there's a few more interesting scenarios to think about, right? For if you go like all electric. I just heard on another podcast about manufacturers dipping their toe into how do you jump an electric vehicle, right? If it really ran all the way out to 0%, and your other car's at home charged, your spouse gets in the car to come rescue you. How do they juice you up, right?
Well, so I have a 2001 BMW manual transmission, and my son and I, the other day, the battery was dead, and I taught him how to jump start it, like, jump it off by popping in second gear. And I taught him that, and I was like, well, you're never gonna have to know that. Like that is a skill that none of your friends will ever have. Pop the clutch to start a car in second gear.
I mean, let alone even having a manual car to be able to do that. Yeah, for sure. Like that's a 1% of 1% there. But no, I think it's transitional, right? I do think all electric's got to be the future on a long enough timeline, because in that scenario of so it's a power issue, so you use the gas powered car. Where are you going, right? Like how many hundreds of miles away are you going to drive to get to civilization again? Like that's pretty, in my mind, that feels like probably pretty post-apocalyptic. I'm probably just going to stay home in that case, but it all depends on what your threat model is, I guess.
So a buddy of mine and I just went to lunch, and he was telling me on the way that his brother-in-law has a Suburban in Southern California, and he converted it to natural gas, and he gets 1,000 miles again. He gets 1,000 miles on a tank.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, and have you seen the ones that run on the diesel engines that run on cooking oil?
Cooking oil, yeah.
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 McDonald's fry grease.
Yep.
That's a long way from Jirah calling Andy a 1%er a couple minutes ago.
1% of 1%, right? To be a driver in 2021, learning to drive a manual car, and then being anywhere near having a manual car. Again, this is in the US. This is a very US centric point of view, right? Europe definitely still loves their manuals, but over here, I mean, they just don't exist, right? Even the high end cars are you can't even get them basically.
Well, I've got 2 strategies now for my wife and buying the cars I want. Number one, the strategy on manual transmission. I had to buy a manual transmission car because what if my kids go to Europe and they want to rent a car? They're gonna have to know how to do that. That was one excuse. The other excuse now with Harvey's scenario, I need to buy a electric car so that I have one of each in the garage in case I get to the meeting and I can't plug in. I'll have the other one.
There you go.
Right. It's funny. I started with that idea and said that I was going to carry 2, and now I don't even drive the other one. My wife does, though. She's happy because now she thinks she's the one that has 2 cars.
Hey, that's a win.
It is. It is.
Well, guys, I think when we first started talking about what podcast we were going to do today, we talked about the gas thing that happened, and we've kind of gone to the next step here. But the first step is the fact that the malware attack that happened, and people have managed to struggle their way through the pandemic, but during that time, the malware stuff continued to happen and will probably continue to happen even at a faster pace. And the idea that everybody's done their basic due diligence to prevent that from happening is is kind of, well, it's inaccurate. And I think what we want to do here is just highlight the fact that COVID-19 wasn't the only thing we had to worry about for the last 18 months.
Right.
The attackers getting stronger and smarter and able to move quicker. So help me understand this blog. Okay, so the blog's title is Data Analytics and Cybersecurity Trends, Threats and Tells from the Cyber Crypt. What's the concept here we're talking about with trends, guys?
So this particular piece of it is just, speaking to kind of what we were talking about a little bit ago, that, we had all of the COVID-19 piece going on. We had, everybody who either couldn't go into work or changed the way that they work. There were lots of habits broken during the last year and a half. And this is, talking more so, during that time, what else changed? Like, not just, what you're doing from the white hat side, the nice side, where people are not attacking companies and taking, their data for ransom, but there's the other side of that with the bad actors who are, attacking by way of virus or by way of ransomware, and making sure that there's a transformation going on in business that has been going on for the past year and a half, but there are also other sides to that. There's a transformation in the other business as well.
So Harvey, I probably should have started us off by highlighting this picture that's here. It says, who led the digital transformation for your company? Answer A.
That's so true.
Answer B is CTO. Answer, I'll put D in there real quick, which is COO. And then answer C, right? Take C, is COVID-19. I'll tell my story. I may have told it multiple times on this podcast, but I'm in Westchester, New York when this all goes down. I go down to World Trade Center and I'm in a meeting, and the COO walks in and starts talking about how to get prepared for, people working from home for a week or two. And I'm looking around looking at all the craziness going on in that part of the world and thinking, okay, well, I guess pandemic's going to be the reason why we make a change here finally. And so the picture here talks about, the obvious answer being COVID-19 and the pandemic being what drove digital transformation quickly in organizations. And then we start talking about the trends that go along with that, which is, what you covered. Jirah, your thoughts on this trends section?
No, I think it's a great reminder that it's, that it's evergreen, right? That transformation and adapting to change has to be part of the, your philosophy of technology and how you manage it and run it every day, right? Nothing's ever done, right? It's just things move down the priority list and then get revisited later, that as they need tune-ups, right? So nothing ever stays the same for long.
Yeah. Well,
I think too, Andy, going back to the picture and the multiple choice with COVID-19 being, what led the digital transformation. I mean, it's kind of an unsaid joke in IT that nobody ever thinks of security until they get hacked. And this is basically a non-technical version of that, right? There are ways that have always been there to make sure that people could work from anywhere. And I know you know this because this is what we do all the time and what we try to make sure our customers have. But the fact that there are lots of companies that are having to go through this quote unquote transformation by way of all of their people, or a significant portion of their people having to work from home or work from anywhere, or, and having to do that basically on the drop of a dime, because there was no real warning to this. It just kind of happened. That's kind of the non-technical equivalent of what we're going to be diving into as well when we talk about threats and ransomware and things like that. The one message that I want to make sure that we get to everybody is don't let it be that you're now looking at security because you just had an event. Like, let's try to prevent events rather than go through them and go through that pain that you don't have to go through.
I kind of equate it to growing up, I lived out in the country. We didn't lock the door even at night. We didn't lock the front door. We didn't lock the back door. We didn't do anything. And then my wife, in a similar situation, she kind of grew up out in the country, but then she went to college in a very urban area. And now when she walks in every door, she locks it behind her. And believe me, I get caught in the driveway quite often. I can't get back in the house. And I'm frustrated by it. But at the same time, being diligent about it and constantly looking for new and more secure ways to secure the perimeter and the interior of our house is probably the right answer. And yet I'm the one being lackadaisical about
it sounds like you need a digital transformation of your front door lock.
Well, yes, we do. And I can tell you at one point I made the effort in putting in digital locks in one of our houses, and I had them lock automatically after 30 seconds. We wore that thing out in about 3.5 weeks.
That sounds about right.
But and that's, maybe that's a whole other topic where you put security in, then you start relying on it, and then it wears out quickly, or you don't keep it up. And the next thing you know, you've got this false sense of security.
Correct.
It'd be worse.
Correct.
All right. The next section of this blog talks about threats and talks about how, we've survived the pandemic and the lockdowns and shutdowns. At the same time, we've seen threats increase. What's going on here?
I think it's poignant to piggyback off your point about the perimeter, right? Because it feels like a year where we've seen, virtually every major software product in your data center be part of some surface area of some attack, right? Whether it has external exposure, to the wide open internet, or whether it's a vector of an attack from even internal, right? Because ransomware can run inside your firewall. I think it reminds our listeners, right, that I think it'd be interesting to run a department where you sort of put a stopwatch on all your upgrades, whether it was needed or not, whether it was a security upgrade or not. Like maybe it's the next XYZ product patch release that fixes some security loophole, but are you testing and automating? Let's do every upgrade as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, right? So that when we get that breach notification or that upgrade available notification, can we apply it that night? Can we apply it in an hour and get patched as soon as possible, right? Because as soon as that's widely advertised as this patch fixes this loophole, the exploits are just out there, right? They already were, but now they're amplified. So I think it bears revisiting. Like, do we really push upgrades out to the monthly window, to the weekly window? Like, let's work towards a culture where we can patch as quickly as possible, as soon as possible from that release to get back to a safer state as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Harvey, thoughts?
Yeah, I always think of security as this big pendulum between being secure and being accessible and compatible. Mm-hmm. And the more secure you get, the more you're going to lock people out. And the more accessible you get, the more susceptible you are to being hacked or having some bad actor come in, through your network and start being able to make changes or take over. I do my best to stay on the more secure side, but you always have to have, you always have to look at what else that means for you. Because if the most secure environment is a machine that's not even on. No way you can hack it, no way you can do anything to the data. That's your most secure environment.
Not no way, it's just harder.
That is the least accessible environment, right? So there are always trade-offs. There's always a way that you have to approach it methodically, right? And make sure that you are accessible to the people you have to be accessible to, and literally to know more. That's the goal. Be accessible to who you have to be accessible for, and literally no more than that. So a lot of thought and a lot of methodical thinking through what you're securing, how you're allowing people to get access to what they need. That is an evergreen thing, right? That's everlasting. That is a full-time job with full-time thoughts and changes going on, because the minute you secure it, there's something else that comes out to make it unsecure. So you always have to be on your game when it comes to security.
We're going through that here at XenTegra, where, Harvey, you don't know this, so I'm talking to Trevor on our CTO side, and We're thinking about how to limit the access into all of our systems through Citrix Workspace. And so that's the only way you get in, which kind of, minimize our attack vector. At the same time, it means it better be up and working all the time, because if it's
You
not,
better believe it.
Yeah. I've gotten an email this hour, right, about, hey, new workstation policies rolling out, and
Yep.
and it even says, to borrow a quote here, for a company of brilliant and trustworthy people, we are still locking down, the perimeter and access. It's not a trust issue. It's a, this is what due diligence looks like in 2021.
I mean, I think that very well illustrates exactly what we're talking about here. We've got, Nutanix on the call, we've got XenTegra on the call, two totally different companies run by two totally different people. And yet both companies at the same time are updating their security policy. Like this is what has to go on at all times. And if you're not doing this, if you don't know what your security policy is, if you don't have a security policy, if you don't know the last time you updated your servers, we are absolutely talking to you.
Well, and we're two companies, not to hold either of us up on a pedestal, we're just two companies, but two companies that as a percentage of our user base, we've got techies out the yin yang, right? Like so much of both our companies are people that do tech 24/7, right? Home labs and everything.
Right.
We've got the most educated users, as a percentage of probably almost any company in the world. And yet we're both still like, we got to harden stuff, we need to lock stuff down.
And I think you're exactly right. There is no putting either on a pedestal right now. This is what it has to be. Like, this is a requirement.
Yeah.
This is, I'm at Pizza Hut, they must have cheese. Like, you have to have this.
Okay. Yep. Priorities. Yep.
Sorry, all my analogies end up being about food.
But security companies, some of the security companies are the ones that are most likely to be attacked because people want to prove a point.
Yes, that is so unfortunately true.
Well, and I think one of the next sections we're going to get to is people being the weakest link. But the next section talks about the terror of technical debate, which might be what we just talked about, right? There's so many different ways. You guys talked about how many techies we have. We got as many techies as we do. Insert your derogatory remark there. That means we got a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and technical debt as well, right? I think this is an interesting statement in the article, that the root of all tech debt is people. And I think that does hold water. I have to chew on that a little bit more, but I do like the thought around people. Technology doesn't cause tech debt. People cause tech debt, right? Whether it's, the quick fix that went into production when it was meant to be a week-long patch, it's always worked this way, let's not touch it, because we don't know what it'll break. We don't have documentation on what needs that DNS service on this IP address, so just don't change anything. I think I'm prepared to agree that the root of all tech debt is people fundamentally, right?
Yeah. Which
is interesting. I've not heard put that so succinctly.
Right. And I think that's a great way to put it. I think that the phrase that we have all heard a million times that describes this perfectly is, oh, well, that's how we've always done it. Yeah. if that doesn't say technical debt more than anything else. Yeah,
that's almost why I opened up with like that adversity, that allergy to change, right? We have to drive towards the opposite of everything is constantly perpetually in change, right? And get used to that. Right? That's that. If there is a new normal, that's the new normal of nothing stays baked for long enough, right? It's just, that's this month's iteration. What's next month look like,
Right.
And the people we're talking about here are the administrators and the people planning out the systems. If we go to the next section of the article, it talks about those other pesky people, end users.
Yeah. Well, in theory, it's interesting to think any user, right, can be a weak link. If I was an admin, I simply hold more privileged tokens, right? Yeah. I'm not necessarily better at scanning a link or eyeballing, is this a safe exe to run? I just have more privileged tokens when I open it.
Essentially, you are more dangerous.
Potentially, absolutely, for sure, yeah. Now, and this reminded me, with our dual focus, right, of you guys being so prominent in the EUC space, Nutanix being a great platform to run EUC. It underlines okay, where do people work? People work on desktops. So how do we limit the blast radius of what that one person on that one desktop can do, right? And my mind instantly goes to published apps, right? If they're on published apps on a non-persistent desktop, then the way I defuse that is log off, right? And whatever processes exist in that desktop, poof, gone.
Right. And if somehow they jump the fence so that it's not just running under that user, then the next option is to reboot.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, get to the multi-user server beneath that. I mean, firewalls at every level, right? Microsegmentation, limit what that can get to. It really, today, this is probably gonna be a broad oversimplification. Today, and in the last, let's call it 10 years, an IT administrator knew how the technology worked and was good at installing it, configuring it, troubleshooting it. What we've not fostered as a culture is a trait and a skill set of, I'll just say, like, to use the shorthand, red teaming the environment, right? Put on the hat and say, what trust does this process or this server or this instance or this container have due to its position on the network in our organization? And how badly could that go for us, right? Like, what's the blast radius? What's the scope of damage that could occur here? And I think that's a kind of creative thought that we've not really trained in our career progressions of the current group of technology administrators.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's funny too that, there are some companies who will have, I guess the most used term is like a hackathon, where they'll invite people to try to penetrate their environment and let them know how they got through there and pay them a reward. That's a creative way to have that red team that you talked about, that is not a team that is beholden to you at all, right? They're beholden to that award.
Yeah.
So they, and it's not just the getting of the reward or the cash or the check or whatever it is. There's also bragging rights in that, right? So they want to make sure that they're the most active and the most trying to think of a better word than lethal against the environment, but the most potent, I guess I'll say.
Yeah.
in trying to make sure that they get in and report whatever that is, which ultimately is making that company a lot safer.
Well, I'll just be the idea guy here. Andy has to go run with it. But I think you could find a new line of consulting, right, around just imagination as a service for is your company prepared for these scenarios, right? Sit down, talk to them for a week or two, deliver your report, and just say, how quickly can you restore a VM, a cluster, a data center? What if these 8 servers were encrypted? What if those users were knocked offline? What if you couldn't work from the office for, I don't know, so let's say 15 months? All these scenarios, right, that you can just give, you don't have to do the work, right? You're giving people the checklist of go train for these scenarios. And when you think you're really good at these, then they need to be part of your DR preparedness. You need to get into your run books. And then come back. We'll find new scenarios, right, based off what we see in the headlines.
Right.
Train for those.
That sounds like a job for Jirah Cox right there. Sold. I'll take it. When we starting? So it's kind of like you're like this pesky little minion. What would we call him back in the Gizmo was one, the little gremlin. You're like a little gremlin. You come, you wreak havoc. You tell them to go figure out what would happen next. They come back. They give you good enough answers, and then you wreak some more havoc.
And similarly, I shouldn't eat after midnight. So that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because then you just become a holy terror. That's when the gloves come off. Well, guys, I think this last section really talks about how much availability there is to find people like Nutanix and XenTegra and Citrix and VMware and Microsoft and XenTegra. And I'm just naming some of the players that we work with that are on the security side, and really just get their inputs. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to be the cook in the kitchen that takes all that ingredients and finds the right formula for your organization. Don't go it alone. There's plenty of people out here to bounce ideas off, and you can't stay awake every night worried about it, but you do need to at least think about it when you wake up every day.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a technology leader listening to this, I'd say, not to make it a podcast where we assign homework, right? But sit down with your team on the next stand-up and be like, have we tested that our backups are really not reachable, right, by virtually any system? Lockdown wherever possible, right? Are we using the right kind of snapshots for our virtual machines for really rapid recovery, right? Nothing faster than a Nutanix snapshot rolling back into a production VM. Where can we turn on more tripwires, right? To find evidence of compromise earlier, right? Stuff like the way we use file analytics to say, hey, this user on this workstation has ransomware encrypting files on these file shares. When did we last review our IDS IPS? What else is out there? You can never be doing too much these days, right? There's almost no level of effort that is overkill to keep you out of the headlines these days.
And you need to get your team together and trust the team, but also verify that what they're telling you is reproducible and accurate. What's your recovery point objective, recovery time objective, how much effort goes into it, what you're doing proactively to try to find things, what you do reactively, like partner with a third party to come in and help you use their best practices, use tools like an extra hop, for example, that can find the source of where all this contamination is coming from. We've had several examples of that being real world. And, the analogy I give all the time is it's like me being out on a boat on the lake with all my family in the boat. And when it breaks down, at that point, now's not the time to be planning on who you're going to call and what you're going to do.
It's too late.
Yeah. To weave it in through the themes we've had on this podcast, right? if to do this exercise, right, if you grab your tech team and you say, hey, prove to me that we can recover from like just having our backups and like a fresh stack of ISOs, right? What does that look like? How long does it take us to get the business back up and running? If you're going to do that kind of exercise, which you definitely should, right? Like yearly at least, if not more frequently, that takes time. That takes people's hours and days to do that kind of exercise.
Yeah.
How do you give your team back more time? Well, obviously we're biased here, but Nutanix is one way to do that, right? When the infrastructure itself takes less time, you get further in that project list, you can get more accomplished, you have more white space to do things that move the ball forward, like call it what it is, almost DR testing, right? More frequently, or app level DR testing. And then the other theme to weave back in, right? Automation, right? When that script that like says, stand up a new data center and these subnets and these domain controllers with this authentication and these dummy users, all of that lets you do more faster in a very meaningful way, right? So,
and if all that makes it just sound like some crazy big idea that you can't do, you don't have the time for, and you don't want to deal with it at all, call XenTegra. We'll be happy to help.
Yeah, like solve the problem however it solves the problem. The only bad move is not working on the problem.
Yes, that would be a bad strategy.
Well, as you guys know, I equate a lot of stuff to the car industry and racing as an example. Notice I put the G on the end of racing, not racing, but racing.
Rubbing is racing.
I'm an educated redneck. My point there is when you are working, let's say in NASCAR or any other Formula One, whatever, you might be leading the race, but you better still be working on your car because the track's going to change. The weather is going to change.
Right.
You need to make sure you're ready to make the right next step. And even if you realize it's not the right next step, being able to adjust from whatever step it was that you made, you probably can't just sit there and assume it's going to run great forever because something will change.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
I'll take your car analogy and raise you a food analogy. Just for fun. When you go and you make something, you cook something, you got about 2 or 3 days to enjoy that. After that, you better cook something else or you're all done.
Change is constant. Yeah, for sure.
That'll get you sick. You'll wish you had COVID at that point.
Right.
At least a mild case of it. Sorry.
Treat your firewall and your IDS like spaghetti. Check it every 3 days or more. I don't know. I'm not as good with the food analogies.
All right, gentlemen. I've got to run. I got to go get some gas.
Well, you enjoy that. I'll think about you.
Harvey, go plug in, Harvey.
Well, okay, so I will jump on that one. So Harvey, I'm going to get gas in my other little car so that I have extra gas around because I'm, same reason I still have 18,000 rolls of toilet paper in my garage.
So do you mean like Andy, like you could transfer range from one vehicle to the other vehicle if you needed to?
No, I just drive around 2 different cars. But
Fascinating.
what I really am going to do, and Harvey, you can't fix this one for me with your electric. You kind of can, but it's extremely expensive. I'm going to get gas. I'll have it in my boat. So come next weekend, I'll be able to go out on the lake.
Very good.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right.
See ya.